On February 1st, 2026, the price of your life-saving diabetes medication jumps 25%. Your next German car? 25% more expensive. That bottle of French wine you bought last month? Add another $20 to the price tag. Swiss chocolates? Gone from the shelves. Italian olive oil? Prepare to pay double. And the reason this is happening has nothing to do with inflation, supply chain problems, or the Federal Reserve. It's because the Prime Minister of Denmark refused to sell an island to Donald Trump. I know that sounds insane, but in 48 hours, 8 of America's closest NATO allies are getting hit with punitive tariffs that will trigger the biggest transatlantic economic war since World War II. And you, the American consumer, are about to pay the price. This isn't a drill. This isn't a negotiation tactic. On January 17th, President Trump officially declared economic war on Denmark, Norway, Sweden, France, Germany, the United Kingdom, the Netherlands, and Finland. The tariffs start at 10% on February 1st and rise to 25% by June unless Europe hands over Greenland. Today, I'm going to show you the leaked list of products that are about to disappear from American stores. I'm going to reveal Europe's $108 billion retaliation plan that could crash the entire US tech sector. And I'm going to explain the real reason Trump is willing to fracture NATO for a frozen island most Americans couldn't find on a map. Because this isn't about Greenland. It's about rare earth minerals, Chinese supply chains, and military control of the Arctic. And by the end of this video, you'll understand why China is the only country celebrating right now. Let's start with what happened in the last 48 hours. Because the diplomatic explosion we just witnessed is unprecedented. On January 17th, Trump posted on Truth Social, and I'm quoting directly here, "We have subsidized Denmark and all of the countries of the European Union and others for many years by not charging them tariffs or any other forms of remuneration. Now after 100%, it is time for them to give back. World peace is at stake." He then mocked Denmark's military presence in Greenland, claiming they have 2 dog sleds as protection, one added recently. Within 24 hours, 8 NATO countries issued a joint statement. Not a diplomatic memo, not a cautious response, a unified declaration of defiance. French President Emmanuel Macron didn't hold back. He posted on X, "No intimidation or threat will influence us, neither in Ukraine, nor in Greenland, nor anywhere else in the world. Tariff threats are unacceptable and have no place in this context. Europeans will respond in a united and coordinated manner should they be confirmed." UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer called the tariffs completely wrong, stating that applying tariffs on allies for pursuing collective security is a violation of NATO principles. Sweden's Prime Minister was even more blunt. "We will not let ourselves be blackmailed. Only Denmark and Greenland decide on issues concerning Denmark and Greenland." And here's the part that should terrify every American watching this. 0 NATO allies sided with the United States. Not one. Instead, 7 European countries just deployed military forces to Greenland. Denmark, Norway, Sweden, France, Germany, the UK, the Netherlands, and Finland all sent troops under the cover of joint Arctic training exercises. But make no mistake, this is a show of force. A warning to Trump that if he even considers a military operation, he'll have to confront soldiers from multiple NATO countries. A professor from the University of Southern Denmark explained it perfectly. The hidden message is that the allies will not accept violations of sovereignty within the alliance. If you're considering a military operation, you will have to handcuff soldiers from a lot of your allies' countries. Even bipartisan U.S. senators traveled to Greenland to oppose Trump. Republican Senator Lisa Murkowski and Independent Senator Angus King publicly stated there is no need for a costly acquisition or hostile military takeover when Denmark is already cooperating on Arctic security. So we have a situation where the President of the United States is more isolated from NATO than at any point in history. And the economic consequences are about to hit American wallets like a freight train. Let me break down exactly what you're going to pay more for starting February 1st. The number 1 category? Pharmaceuticals. Europe exports $127 billion worth of medicine to the United States every year. That's 22.6% of everything we buy from them. Ozempic, Wegovy, those weight loss drugs everyone's talking about. Made by Denmark's Novo Nordisk. $15.6 billion in annual sales. 58% of their revenue comes from the U.S. market. Under a 25% tariff, your prescription costs are about to explode. Mounjaro, the diabetes drug from Eli Lilly, produced in Ireland. Ireland alone supplies over 1/4 of America's pharmaceutical imports. And Ireland is facing the exact same tariff structure. Blood thinners like Eliquis, HPV vaccines like Gardasil, generic drugs that millions of Americans depend on to survive. All of them are about to cost 25% more. If you have diabetes, cardiovascular disease, or any chronic condition requiring European-manufactured medication, your out-of-pocket costs just increased by hundreds, potentially thousands of dollars per year. Next up, German cars. BMW, Mercedes-Benz, Audi, Porsche, Volkswagen. Germany exported $19.4 billion in vehicles to the U.S. last year. Under a 25% tariff, a Volkswagen Jetta that cost $22,495 will jump to $33,742. A BMW X5? Add another $15,000 to the sticker price. And it's not just luxury brands. Volvo from Sweden, Ferrari and Maserati from Italy, all facing the same 25% price hike. Then there's French wine and luxury goods. A bottle of Veuve Clicquot champagne that costs $55 right now? That's $82 after tariffs. A Hermes handbag priced at $13,100? Try $19,650. Louis Vuitton, Le Creuset kitchenware, Fragonard perfume. All of it is about to become unaffordable for middle-class Americans. Italian luxury goods? Italy exported $5 billion in fashion to the U.S. in 2025. Olive oil, Parmigiano Reggiano cheese, Italian wine, all facing 15 to 50% tariffs. Swiss chocolates? A 15-piece box of Laderac that costs $35 today will run you $52 in 2 weeks. And here's the kicker. Economists are now predicting that this tariff war will push inflation back above 3% for 2026. Goldman Sachs estimates that tariff pass-through has already added 0.5 percentage points to core inflation. Without tariffs, inflation would be at 2.3%, just above the Federal Reserve's target. With Trump's escalating tariff regime, we're looking at 2.8 to 3% inflation throughout 2026. Bank of America concluded, and I'm quoting, "There is no question tariffs have elevated consumer prices." They estimate that shoppers are bearing 50 to 70% of tariff costs, with businesses absorbing the remainder. Yale Budget Lab calculated that the average American household will lose $2,400 in 2025 due to tariffs. The poorest households will lose $1,300 annually. Clothing prices are up 37%. Shoe prices up 39%. The effective U.S. tariff rate just hit 18.6%, the highest since 1933. Translation: every single American family is about to get poorer because of a dispute over Greenland. But here's where it gets even worse. Europe isn't just sitting there taking the hit. They're preparing a retaliation package that could cripple the U.S. economy. Option 1 is simple. The EU has a pre-prepared $108 billion tariff package targeting American exports. Bourbon, Harley-Davidson motorcycles, blue jeans, agricultural products. All designed to inflict maximum political pain on Republican congressional districts. This package was suspended in July 2025 as part of a fragile trade deal, but it's set to automatically reactivate on February 6th, just 5 days after Trump's tariffs kick in. But option 2 is the real nuclear weapon. It's called the Anti-Coercion Instrument, or ACI, and French President Macron is pushing hard to activate it. The ACI was adopted by the EU in 2023 but has never been used. Until now. Here's what it can do. Restrict U.S. access to EU public contracts worth hundreds of billions of dollars annually. Limit foreign direct investment and banking activities. Impose punitive taxes on U.S. tech giants like Apple, Tesla, Google, and Meta. Curtail trade and services, where the U.S. enjoys a $109 billion surplus with Europe. A source close to Macron confirmed. He will request, on France's behalf, the activation of the anti-coercion instrument. French officials have explicitly named Apple, Tesla, Google, and Meta as targets. If you think a 25% tariff on European cheese is bad, Wait until Europe bans US tech services across the entire continent. And there's one more leverage point Europe holds that nobody's talking about. European countries own $8 trillion in US bonds and equities. That's almost twice as much as the rest of the world combined. A Deutsche Bank analyst warned. In an environment where the geoeconomic stability of the Western alliance is being disrupted existentially, it is not clear why Europeans would be as willing to play this part. Translation: if Europe decides to dump US treasuries and equities in a coordinated Sell America trade, US financial markets could collapse overnight. EU leaders are meeting in Brussels on January 23rd to finalize their response. Even Italy's Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni, who's typically sympathetic to Trump, called the tariff threat a mistake. So why is Trump willing to risk all of this? Why is he fracturing NATO, triggering inflation, and alienating every major ally over a frozen island? Because Greenland sits on top of some of the most valuable resources on the planet. And the real enemy in this fight isn't Denmark. It's China. Let me explain the rare earth mineral chokehold that's driving this entire crisis. China controls 70% of global rare earth mining and 90% of global refining and processing capacity. The United States imports 80% of its rare earth elements from China, and Beijing has weaponized this dependency. In April 2025, China imposed export restrictions on rare earth magnets. BMW, Mercedes-Benz, and Ford immediately flagged production challenges due to supply shortages. Why does this matter? Because rare earth elements are indispensable for everything that powers modern civilization. Electric vehicle motors, neodymium and dysprosium create the most powerful permanent magnets ever invented. Without them, EVs don't work. Tesla is completely dependent on Chinese rare earths. Wind turbines. You can't build efficient renewable energy without rare earth magnets. Military applications. The F-35 fighter jet requires 418 kilograms of rare earths per unit. Guided missiles, radar systems, laser targeting, flight control systems all require rare earths. Smartphones, batteries, electronics. Everything you use every day depends on these materials. And Greenland has some of the largest rare earth deposits on Earth. The Kvænfeld mine alone could produce 30,000 tons annually, roughly 15% of global demand. But here's the problem. Chinese investment already dominates Greenland's mining sector. Xinghe Resources, a Chinese rare earth giant, is the second largest shareholder in the Kvænfeld project. They signed a memorandum of understanding in 2018 to lead processing and marketing. A 2021 Danish Institute for International Studies report warned the two rare earth projects in South Greenland will most likely supply Chinese-controlled raw materials. Greenland's business minister stated bluntly, without an influx of investment, Greenland will have to turn to other partners, including China. So the strategic calculus is simple. If the United States doesn't secure Greenland's rare earth deposits, China will. And that gives Beijing complete control over the supply chain for electric vehicles, renewable energy, and advanced weapons systems. But it's not just about minerals. It's about military dominance in the Arctic. Greenland controls the Guyuk Gap. That's the Greenland-Iceland-UK maritime choke point. Every Russian submarine leaving the Kola Peninsula has to pass through this corridor to reach the North Atlantic. NATO uses it to monitor Russian and Chinese submarine movements. Patuffik Space Base in northern Greenland is one of the Pentagon's most critical installations. Early warning radars feed directly into U.S. homeland defense, detecting missile launches from Russia or China over the North Pole. Satellite command and control, space domain awareness, secure communications infrastructure. Russia has built a massive Arctic military presence. Nuclear submarines can pass through the Bear Gap between Norway and Svalbard, slip under the Arctic ice, and enter the Guyuk Gap undetected. And China is expanding into the Arctic too. Beijing declared itself a near-Arctic state in 2018. Their Polar Silk Road initiative seeks to develop Arctic shipping routes that could cut transit time from China to Europe by 27 days. Russia and China are increasingly cooperating on the Northern Sea route, allowing dual-use shipping between Europe and Asia. Denmark's 2025 Intelligence Outlook warned, Russia continues its military build-up, and China continues to develop its capacity to operate both submarines and surface vessels in the region. Western sanctions on Russia will lead it to deepen its Arctic cooperation with China. So Trump sees Greenland as the key to countering both Russia and China in the Arctic. The problem? The U.S. already has full military access to Greenland under the 1951 U.S.-Denmark Defense Agreement. Washington can construct and maintain military bases without owning the territory. Republican Representative Michael McCall warned, "The president has full military access to Greenland to protect us from any threat." For him to militarily invade would turn Article 5 of NATO on its very head and start a war with NATO itself. Democratic Senator Chris Van Hollen was even more direct. Denmark and Greenland have both said to the United States, "You can take what measures you need to protect the security of the United States. We have a base there already, and we can expand that base." This is not about security. This is about a land grab. Donald Trump wants to get his hands on the minerals and other resources of Greenland. So here's where we are. Trump has fractured NATO, triggered the biggest transatlantic trade war since World War II, pushed inflation back above 3%, and set the stage for Europe to retaliate against American tech companies and possibly dump trillions in U.S. assets. And the ultimate winner? China. While the United States alienates its closest allies and fractures the Western alliance, Beijing consolidates control over rare earth supply chains, expands its polar Silk Road, and deepens military cooperation with Russia in the Arctic. Trump's gambit to counter China by seizing Greenland has instead isolated America and strengthened the very adversaries he claims to oppose. Starting February 1st, you're going to feel this in your wallet. Medicine, cars, wine, luxury goods, industrial machinery. All of it is about to get 25% more expensive. Inflation is about to spike. The Federal Reserve will delay rate cuts. Borrowing costs will stay high. And if Europe activates the anti-coercion instrument, American tech companies could lose access to the world's second-largest economy. This is not financial advice. I'm not telling you to panic or make any specific investment decisions, but I am telling you to prepare for volatility, prepare for price hikes, and prepare for a trade war that nobody wins except China. The question now is whether NATO can survive this. Whether the transatlantic alliance that has kept the peace for 75 years can withstand a president willing to break it over a frozen island. As Sweden's prime minister said, "We will not let ourselves be blackmailed." The tariffs start in less than 2 weeks, and the fallout is just beginning.